All right, so I think people are still going to trickle in here, but we'll go ahead and jump into it as we have a lot of content to cover today. Welcome to our third of and final episode in this webinar series that we've been doing around process improvement and IBM Blueworks Live. This last one is going to kind of bring this full circle because we do want to talk about not only Blueworks Live, but also an exciting accelerator that we offer at Salient called Blueworks Insights. And this is a free tool that we will showcase on some of the big features and capabilities, and then talk about how you can get access to it at no cost. Before we start, just some quick intros. My name is Jared Michaelek. I'm VP of Innovation and AI Applications at Salient Process. We are a true blue business partner focused on business automation and AI. I'm joined by Bob Sworry, who's the OG Process Ninja. He's principal of worldwide sales leader for CloudPack for business automation. Very excited to be joined by Bob, given his deep background on business automation and specifically around Blueworks. So let's go ahead and get started here. High level agenda. We are going to cover just kind of a little background on why this is important. Why are we talking about this today? Just give you some history and talk about some of the pain points that organizations are feeling. And then looking towards the future. We'll do a brief overview of Blueworks Live and then Blueworks Insights. And then the bulk of the session today is going to be spent with a live demonstration. We are going to do a live demo of both Blueworks Live and Blueworks Insights. I know in some of our previous webinars, we assumed that you knew what Blueworks Live was, but we want to kind of bring this full circle and just make sure that we cover the basics on both of the technologies to really showcase where this kind of 1 + 1 = 3 approach comes into play. And then we'll round this out with just how do you get access. If you are interested in doing a free trial or getting full access, we can talk about that. And then we'll open up to some Q&A and next steps. So with that, Bob, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about the problem statement and then cover some of the background on Blueworks Live.
Hey, thanks so much, Jared. I appreciate it. So thank you for the kind words, Jared. Basically, what Jared's saying is that I'm old, and so I've been around a little bit. So let me just share a little bit of a perspective with you. So when I started doing process modeling and process reengineering, that was about 22 years ago. Okay? So don't think that process modeling as a function is a new capability, right? In fact, people for years and years and years have been doing process improvement initiatives. So you may have heard of things like TQM, Total Quality Management, or Kaizen, which is a Japanese improvement methodology, Lean Sigma, Six Sigma. These things have been around for many, many years, right? And as part of these process improvement initiatives, the idea is to capture what is going on in the process so you can fix it. Right now, the very first process modeling exercise that I was part of is we went into a room, and I was working for a bank at the time, and we took every form and paper that we used for a lending process and put them up on a wall, all the way around the wall, like kind of like this picture you see here. Okay, and we captured the forms and we tried to capture the information. So the reason I'm telling you this is this idea of modeling processes isn't new, but what is new is the tools and the accelerators that we have to take advantage of the information that you're documenting. Okay, so the goals are still the same here, but now we have better tools and technology. So if you want to go ahead and put those hit the next, there we go. Okay, so as you can see here, the fact that we're doing process modeling is important, right? And you'll see that like lots of CEOs believe in this. This, like I said, this isn't something that was just recently invented. Process modeling has been something that's been around for a while, but our technology is improving, right? We have better computing speeds, we have new technologies, we have apps, we have AI, we have all these different things that are pushing these capabilities. So the challenges that we face is that if you're just modeling process and you don't have a tool or tools to help you, what happens is you can end up with something like this, where you're just drowning in information, right? So if you don't have a standard format or way to document the processes, it does create quite a bit of confusion, and that results in no version control or audit trail, right? So if I'm modeling a process and I did it in, open source modeling tool, right? Well, I have this product, but how do I share it with other people, right? How do I send it to you for you to review it and then tell me if I'm on course, or what changes do I need to make to the process? How do I make sure that I'm looking at the right process? I'm on version 2 here, but you only have version 1, right? So also being able to store the information. Where are we storing this stuff? We're storing it in SharePoint. We're storing it in internal wikis. We're storing it in Dropbox. Where is everything, right? Where's the information that people need to access to model their processes? How do I share this with you? Right, I want to be able to collaborate and help, and you give me your information and ideas on how to make the process better. But how can I do that without a tool or capability? There's also other information we capture about processes too, right? Like we call it metadata, but it's, who does the process step, and how long does it take, and what are the problems associated with this activity, right? Again, what we're trying to do here is document processes, but there are some of these challenges. And also, what do we do about taking our process improvement program that we're starting, right? We want to push this out to the organization. How do we scale what we're doing, right? How do we scale the technology and the approach, right? So it's it's challenging, and it's not easy to go beyond just the documentation, right? So it's hard to go past just the basics, but we're going to show you how you can get more out of the work that you're currently doing. Next slide is good. Go ahead, Jared, and flip to the next slide if you can.
Sorry about that, Bob. My whole computer just froze, but we're good to go now.
Okay, I was going to say I was just going to pull mine up. No problem. So there are some common, and go ahead and throw those all down, but if you can't, there's some common IBM Blueworks Live questions. Okay, so if you're not familiar with Blueworks Live, you're going to love this tool. IBM's had it about 10 years or so, and it's actually IBM's first cloud product. So if you think of all these cloud products and things, Blueworks Live is actually our first one. And so we continue to improve this 3 times a year with ongoing releases and so forth. But, these are the common questions we get. So we've documented our process. We drew this flow chart, right? We've added information to it. But how can we make better use of this information, right? We have all this information in our model. What can we do it? Can I get a better visibility into what I'm doing today? Right, I can see my process, I can see all the capabilities within Blueworks Live, but are there other reports and dashboards that I use that can be used, right? So one of the questions we often get is, yes, we've documented this process, we've put in all this information, all this metadata, who does what, how long it takes, the documents that are shared, customer problems, all this stuff is built in, right? So how can we get more information out of Blueworks Live, and how can I compare multiple blueprints to each other? So what I'm talking about now is, you went through this project and you put all the information you needed in this process model. Now let's actually do some real work with this. Let's understand the strengths and the weaknesses and the areas that we need to improve. There's also some challenges on occasion with organizing the number of users you have, assigning licenses, all this sort of stuff. This is also a challenge that people are facing from time to time. So I guess the thing to take away from this slide is that we're modeling the processes, we're doing the things that we used to do, which is great. But now, because of technology and some capabilities within Blueworks Live, we can do more with the information that you already have, right? So we're just saying, use what you have and let's do more with it. Okay, Jared. Okay, so I touched a little bit about Blueworks Live. Let's talk about what it really is. So as you can see here, there's a number of statistics, 6 of them, in fact, and they're all pointing towards really the same destination in my mind. And the idea here is that organizations realize that they're going to have to do things digitally. It's a digital disruption. We all know this, right? Started during the COVID era, but now it's all just been, kind of a hyper automation and hyper speed of things because of some of the AI capabilities and some of the API capabilities that are built into products. So you're going to see here that 92% of executives agree by 2025, digitized workflows leveraging AI are going to be the norm. 70 to 85% operational increase through process modeling, right? So we have process modeling, and you've heard process mining. Process modeling is the user side of things. Who does what? Hey, tell me the problems when you're doing your job. It's the human side, the aspects, the issues, humans, and problems that people face. Process mining is taking the system logs and looking at it from that side. So it's really two perspectives. But what I'm saying here is, for years, process modeling has been the thing, as it should be. And what we're saying now is get more out of that model. And this is the direction that many, many leaders and industry folks are going, is they're trying to digitize, they're trying to do things better, and they're trying to do things faster. Go ahead, sir. All right, and these are really the four key hurdles in process optimization, okay? The first is inadequate tools. So there are tools that are provided and that you can use to model processes, right? There are some very, very basic ones. There's some very, very advanced ones. We feel like Blueworks Live sort of sits in the middle. We make it very easy to use, but it's very powerful with information. But if you don't use a tool similar to Blueworks Live, there can be some challenges in terms of the way that the processes are mapped, the way that the transformations work, underscoring the need for efficient and other tools, or it underscores the need for these challenge. Second is
Bob, I think we're losing your connection there. Not sure if there's a alternate way.
Let me see. Better?
You're just coming in and out a little bit.
Okay. Now.
It's not getting any better. Let's maybe, if you don't mind, I can maybe bring this part home, and we're
go ahead. Yeah,
anyway. Yeah. So just picking up for Bob. So just going through some of these challenges, and we did talk about this at kind of in the problem statement, but these are all very real things that organizations face when they're using more traditional models like Visio or drawing tools or even spreadsheets and Word documents. And so all of these things are going to contribute to the problems of just general process improvement and understanding how the business operates. And without that understanding, there's no way to improve it. There's not a good way to automate what you're trying to capture. And so Blueworks Live comes in, and again, Bob mentioned it's been around about 10 years. It's actually, I think, going back to 2009 is when IBM first launched Blueworks Live in its current form, and it's been used around the world by organizations, and it's a great way to just transition in a lightweight way off of those more traditional tools. And it's really around this kind of discovery, documentation, and then collaboration, which really helps organizations get their house in order and just get a better understanding of how the processes work. And there's some key features here around engaging users with multiple ways for users to interact with the system, to be able to standardize. That's a big one, and it's adding guardrails and adding some kind of ways that can guide the user, which in some cases sounds limiting, but it's the only way that we've seen that organizations can scale. And that collaboration feature is huge. And getting teams, it's not just 2 or 3 people at the top of the mountain that are in charge of all this process documentation. This is actually a company-wide initiative, and a lot of our clients that are using Blueworks Live look to expand this to the whole organization, if only at read-only levels. So just thinking about the benefit of being able to have an understanding of where do I sit in this process? What's happened before this? What happens after this? And how do I participate in this overall process? And also understanding how some of the key business operations are happening, like expense approvals, time reporting, vacation requests, right? What are some of the contributing factors to that? And so having that as almost like an employee handbook is extremely useful. And then having that single source of truth, not worrying about, having, the file versions that say final, 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 right? That which one is the latest, and I'm digging through emails trying to find the latest version of this document. We know exactly where it is. We know exactly what fed into this and the history leading up to that, which is huge. And then, of course, it's a secure cloud-based solution, nothing to install, nothing to not worrying about outside influences. It's a very, and as Bob said, it's IBM's first true SaaS tool. It's born in the cloud, and it's been doing this for now, I guess, 15 years, if my math is right. And then just want to talk about a little bit of the APIs, because this is going to become important. Some exciting things that have happened just recently with some of the new API integrations that are introduced. The APIs are key, and as you'll hear about how we've added new features and new reports and new functionality, it's all through the APIs. It's all through the supported API layer, so that we are enforcing security. We're enforcing the role-based rules that we've set up. So if you're not allowed to see something in one tool, you can't see it in the other. And so some of the exciting things that just came out about a month ago, the ability to push information back into Blueworks Live, specifically creating process. This is a huge one because we can now use other tools to generate new process and then automatically input that into Blueworks Live as a new BPMN process blueprint. We can also synchronize metadata. This is going to be key. If you were on the previous webinar series episodes talking about Open Pages integration, we would not be able to do Open Pages integration without these two API extensions. Some of the things we've done with Gen AI, that's key to be able to pull metadata and to generate process from things like documents and images and audio. We wouldn't be able to do that in a natural and automated way if it weren't for these APIs. We can also add documentation. So when you think about the source of truth, so imagine that you have information sitting in like an Open Pages or Salesforce or ServiceNow, and that information needs to stay there, then we don't want to necessarily manually replicate that and try to keep that in sync. We can actually use tools to keep that information in sync. So adding documentation either initially when we generate the process or to keep things in sync is going to be key. And then lastly, creating policies. And we've seen this as a great enhancement to be able to use things like either internal policies or even external policies. So to feed Blueworks Live with these new policies and to update that information is going to be really key, so that you don't have users having to go in and reviewing things and making sure that everything's up to date. A lot of this can happen automatically now with these API extensions. All right, now let's talk about Blueworks Insights. So Insights, just some history on this. We started building Insights, I think about 10 years ago or close to it. It's something that kind of originated from custom work that we were doing with our clients. So with those APIs came the opportunity to start building add-ons on a case-by-case basis. So we would have clients saying, hey, we want to get a data dump of all of our blueprints in our account, or we want to get a better understanding of the metadata or the documentation within each of the blueprints, or I want to be able to run a report on the activity that's happening in my account so I know who's logging in and who's not. And so we started building these one-off scenarios, and over time we realized there's a lot of common requests. There's a lot of common features that we could roll into a single offering. And we made the determination that that is going to be a services accelerator. That's going to be purely a way to add value to our clients, enrich their Blueworks Live experience, and ideally help them to both get a set of Blueworks Live diagrams set up very quickly to get a better handle on that environment, and then also to extend beyond just Blueworks Live, right? To be able to identify new opportunities and areas of improvement so that we can truly get the value of process documentation, because it's not just for documentation's sake, right? We're doing this for a reason. We're trying to improve our business. So what if we can get to the good stuff faster? And so Blueworks Insights is a SaaS-based tool that sits on top of Blueworks Live, right? It's a way for us to add new reporting, analytics, visualization, management, and we'll talk about some of the key features here in a moment. But it's really a way for us to extend the value. And so with that, we keep lockstep in line with what IBM is doing with Blueworks Live. The last thing we want to do is introduce a feature that is going to be introduced by IBM a couple months later, right? That's a waste of our time. We don't want to confuse the market. So we're always looking for ways that we can enhance the experience without stepping on what's already there. And so we've done a good job. And I will say too that almost all of the features that we're going to talk about are customer driven. We do have our own ideas and we do start to infuse things such as the natural language or Gen AI processing that we're doing. But a lot of the features are going to come from our customer feedback and just interactions with those customers. And so let's talk about some of the features in Blueworks Live. So if you're not familiar with Blueworks Insights, if you're not familiar with Insights, these are just a few of the things that we're creating. So dashboarding, right? Being able to create both out-of-the-box dashboards, but then to drag and drop your own dashboards based on either out-of-the-box reports or on new reports that you're building, and then the ability to collaborate and share those reports with other people on your team. And so this is a really nice way to just make it a little more accessible. One common pattern that we're starting to see is the ability to have executives log in to Insights only. They still need a Blueworks Live license, but this is a little more intuitive from a visual standpoint than going into Blueworks Live directly, where Blueworks is very powerful, but it's also you need to understand what spaces are and what blueprints are, and you don't get kind of that 30,000 foot view of what's going on in the account. And so dashboards are a nice way to introduce that. There are a ton of blueprint specific reports. Obviously, blueprints are the heart of Blueworks Live. And so a lot of the reports that we're creating are based on what's happening with the blueprints. Things like looking for duplicates, right? When you're creating new blueprints or you're copying a blueprint into another space, a lot of times that gets lost and you may have two people working on the exact same blueprint. So how do we start to identify? Today, that's based on names. So we look for duplicate names. We are looking at doing a little more fuzzy logic using AI to compare blueprints to one another to find blueprints that maybe are overlapping and that are doing the same thing. And this is especially important for published blueprints. And most of the blueprint reports are focused around published, but you can do these reports for any blueprint that's in the account. Looking at efficiencies and value analysis. So as you start to put in things like work time and wait time and value add indicators, how can I start to do comparisons between blueprints just to get a high level view on how relatively efficient or valuable are these processes, right? And that's a key theme too, is being able to compare blueprints to one another, something that's not as easy to do in Blueworks Live on its own. A big one is process completeness. This is a very popular report where you built a process and you have 80 steps in that process and it looks really pretty, but there's nothing behind it. Is it really valuable? You could have done that on a whiteboard. You could have done that with a drawing tool like Visio. So going beyond just the image, the two-dimensional picture of the process, what's behind it and what are the important metrics that we're trying to capture? And if I had a report where I don't need to dig into each individual process blueprint or even each activity to see, did they fill this out? Did they fill this out? We can use process completeness to say across the board, this one's 25% complete, this one's 40% complete, just based on the fields that I care about. That's going to help me know where I still have work to do. SIPOC and RACI, this is a very common one as well, mainly because the data is already there. Blueworks Live has concepts around SIPOC, supplier input, output, customer. Those are default fields in Blueworks Live, but there's not a really great SIPOC visualization to that. So we just take that information from the blueprint. We don't change anything about the blueprint. We just show a visual of the SIPOC. And same thing with RACI, right? There's not a responsible, accountable, consulted field in Blueworks Live, but there is participant and business owner and expert, which you can align to responsible, accountable, consulted. And then informed is not a field by default, but if you add a custom field informed, now you can build a RACI matrix just out of the box without doing anything else other than just pulling that data from Blueworks Live. Scorecards is another one we'll talk about, and I'll show this live in a moment. But scorecards are ways for us to track individual metrics that maybe are not at the blueprint or activity level, right? Maybe they are more subjective measurements. Maybe they're more intuitive that as a process owner, I know. So whether it's complexity or impact to the customer or visibility to executives, right? These are important metrics, but there's no place to capture those in Blueworks Live. So if we're able to capture those on the blueprints and then compare those scorecards across multiple blueprints, that's going to be very useful. Being able to report on tagging. Tagging is one of the most underused features in Blueworks Live, but it's one of the most important in our view because it's the only way that you can truly capture the many-to-many relationships that are inside of Blueworks Live. So a lot of times organizations struggle with where should I put this blueprint because it doesn't align to just one business unit. How do I identify which business units this is important to? We can use tagging to do that. And so we've added a new tagging report that lets you do roll-up reports and very quickly find information based on the tags of each of the blueprints. And then lastly, we've created our own custom report builder that allows you, if you don't see a report in Blueworks Live by default, there are ways to create your own reports. And this is being extended every single time we have a release. We have ways to do alternate searches. So being able to find blueprints and find spaces and be able to manage that information directly through just an alternate interface. We're not doing anything that's going to step on Blueworks Live directly, but it's a way for us to just provide different ways to get to the information that you care about. There are multiple just new visualizations that we can create. So things like business architecture, creating a capability map or taxonomy map based on what's inside of Blueworks Live. This is key to create structure and hierarchy and be able to align certain capabilities to those different levels. Customer journey mapping. We've been doing customer journey mapping in Blueworks for a long time. The only problem with customer journey mapping is it doesn't look like a customer journey when you create it as a discovery map or a blueprint inside of Blueworks. So we've just created a way that will turn your Blueworks Live blueprint or discovery map into what looks like a customer journey. Glossary dependencies. This is one of my favorite features where you have this many-to-many relationship that just gets created organically, right? So that you can say, show me all of the processes where HR is involved, and very quickly you can get that map. There's not a lot of visuals to that. So viewing that kind of many-to-many relationship between all of the different glossary terms and how they relate back to blueprints and even down to the activity level is going to be helpful. Metro map visualization, this is something that we are continuing to work on and evolve. But the idea here is that what if we could take the information that we're capturing in Blueworks and start to visualize it as a subway map, like a metro map, and see, each individual station might be the blueprints, and the lines or the trains might be the business units or the system or the business owner, right? That's going to create that many-to-many. We can see the interchanges. We can see where things overlap and things intersect. And so we're continuing to evolve that. But any feedback you have on that is going to be very valuable. And then the space hierarchy. This is a way for us to create a tree diagram of every single space and every single blueprint in the entire account. This is very helpful to just get an understanding of how complex our Blueworks Live environment has gotten. So as we start to get our house in order and start to clean things up, we can use that tree and that hierarchy to really create a visualization of that. And then there are three dedicated modules. The risk and control module, we talked about that in our first episode of the series around Open Pages and Blueworks Live integration. That compliance module sits right between those, right, and helps us to create new reports and visualizations based on data coming from both Open Pages and from Blueworks Live. But you don't necessarily need Open Pages to make that work. You can actually capture risks and controls directly in Blueworks Live and then create some metadata inside of the Blueworks Insights module here, and we're continuing to evolve that. The legal module, this was something we created for a large international law firm. It's now being used by multiple law firms as well as legal departments at organizations. So the legal side has their own process standard called ILTA, the International Legal Technology Association. It's essentially like APQC, except for law firms or for legal departments. And so if you think about legal procedures, that's a process, right? But it's a little bit different than a core business process that you would see in like a Lean Six Sigma or documentation. And so we wanted to account for that and allow for you to create that structure and hierarchy. And then there's an RPA module that allows us to create visualizations and dependencies between the different artifacts, and really taking advantage of that relationship module in Blueworks Live, where we see these intersections of different information. And from the context of RPA, that's important because if I'm creating a new bot, or if I'm changing a bot, or if a system gets upgraded, I need to know which bots are going to be impacted. So if you've tied those processes to the system and even down to the screen or field level, now you can get a full view on what's being impacted. And then lastly, a number of administration type reports. These are key for just organizing the account, being able to get visibility into what's happening, being able to manage users, and we can also set up automated notifications. So that's a lot of features. I didn't cover them all, but those are the key ones that we see used the most, and I'll go through those in the live demo in a moment. But I do want to highlight some of the things that are just being introduced now. So a lot of you that use Blueworks Insights today, you've been kind of patiently waiting for these. These are now available as kind of early access, so please get in touch. If you know Salient, you know that we do have a number of other accelerators. So the Innovation Studio that we presented in the last episode of the series, that's been taking some of the priorities on the development, but we are now introducing some of these new exciting features as well. So some of these include things like utilizing that new API that was released last month to be able to import an Excel file, a Word document, a text document, and automatically turn that into a BPMN diagram. Being able to edit activity details directly in Blueworks Insights. So imagine having a screen that has every single activity and every single property of those activities in one view. You don't have to open each individual activity to change it. You can actually just do it all in one view, hit save, and it pushes all that information back into Blueworks Live. And then the documentation synchronization allows us to connect this to other systems and be able to have a better source of truth for the documentation on each of those tabs. If you were on the last webinar we did around Innovation Studio, you know that there's a lot of exciting things that we're doing around generative AI and Blueworks Live. And since Blueworks Insights and Innovation Studio share a code base, we're able to very quickly roll that into Blueworks Live as well, or Blueworks Insights as well. So, doing things like recommending processes just based on some prompts or instructions, being able to generate process from things like documents, images, audio, doing process analysis on those processes, either generated or from Blueworks Live itself, and then doing risk assessments. So tying that into the risk module, we see a value of being able to automatically identify potential risks and recommended controls within a process, and then feed that into our compliance module. The big difference here between Innovation Studio and Blueworks Insights is that Insights requires Blueworks Live. It sits on top of Blueworks Live. So we're not importing anything into Blueworks Insights. We have the processes already there, so it's a little quicker to kind of do some of this processing against Insights, but there's also some things that we'll be seeing on Innovation Studio, but certainly there is a connection here, right? And ideally we will start to see users using both for different kinds of reasons. And then lastly, it's a very exciting feature that we are monitoring the IBM roadmap very closely, because some of this may be coming in the core product itself. So we're being a little bit careful with how fast we roll this out. But the idea is that we're able to set up lifecycle governance, review, approval rules, right? Going beyond what is baked into Blueworks Live today around the process app feature, we see that we can add more specific type things like setting process owners, setting SLAs around how often the review cycle should happen, and then to have automated processes that just work, that assign tasks to the right people, where you have dashboards and visibility into what's happening with some of that. So some of that is coming, and we do have an early access of that available now, but we are also watching that June release that IBM is providing, and so we'll see some of that coming soon. And then how does this work, right? How do we connect? This is important for our InfoSec friends and making sure that we're not doing something that is kind of outside of the rules of what an organization would accept. Basically, we just link the accounts through an OAuth authentication using those service tokens, right? So we're not storing any sensitive data, any passwords, anything like that. It's just those tokens so that that access can be revoked at any time. So InfoSec does like that, and it makes it much easier to capture that information. You can log in one of three ways: direct username and password. We can set up SSO. Right now, that's mainly around Azure SAML, but we are looking at extending to other capabilities as well. And then we can also use our IBM ID, as long as your IBM ID matches your Blueworks Live user email address. And it's fully secure. So we're encrypting metadata. Only certain fields, like the scorecards I mentioned, that is just metadata that we're storing on our side, mainly because there's nowhere to store that in Blueworks Live. Although now with the API opening up, we're looking at pushing everything into Blueworks and not storing anything on our side, because that just makes it easier to get accepted. Okay, enough with the slides. Let's jump into the live demo. I'm going to go through a brief demo of Blueworks Live, and then we'll showcase insights as well, and then round it out with talking about how you can get access. So with that, let's go ahead and log into Blueworks. I'm just going to do a quick high-level demo. If you have been using Blueworks for a while, this might be a little bit of a repeat, but maybe you'll learn something new. And this is the demo that I give quite often, so if you've already seen it, my apologies, but we'll kind of just do some basics here. So the use case we'll use is HR onboarding, right? That's a very common use case in process mapping. We're creating a new blueprint in my sandbox space. So the concepts here, if you're not familiar with Blueworks Live, is that you have spaces and blueprints. So they're kind of the two core artifacts. There's other things like decisions, policies, and process apps, but mainly we're working with blueprints and spaces. So my new blueprint is called HR onboarding, and this is not going to look like a process diagram right out of the gate. This is going to look like a virtual whiteboard with sticky notes on it that we can move around. And that's intentional because this makes it much easier, much more accessible to maybe stakeholders or subject matter experts that are not as familiar with process mapping, right, or process diagrams. And so I'm going to go ahead and create a few milestones here. We'll just build this really quick. So let's say that the first milestone, we're going to start with the offer going out. So the HR might send the offer letter. They're going to review the offer. They're going to sign the letter. And then they'll return the letter. If it's a physical letter, right? It's probably an email, but we'll leave it like that. So once they've accepted the offer, we're going to do some things around documentation. This will be things like, we'll do it. This is a US-based use case. So we'll say they select a health plan, choose 401k. We might perform a background check. Then we might do some things in facilities. This will be things like order a new laptop. And then lastly will be our first day. This will be host, welcome orientation. So there we go. So again, pretty simple process, but you get the idea that we have these steps that are happening. I'm not as worried about the exceptions or the decisions that are being made. I'm not as worried about the order that this is happening. So it's just kind of a first pass. Give me the big things that happen within this process. So think about it as like a design thinking or some kind of brainstorming. And these are all I can move these, drag and drop. So it's very easy to get started. But the goal is not this visual, right? The goal is what is behind this. We're going beyond just the two-dimensional picture, because I could probably create this in Excel or PowerPoint, but it's what's behind each activity, which is important. So we have all of these properties that I can choose from. I can add my own custom properties. And so we're going to go ahead and start to type HR, and you see the list of our very messy sandbox, but you see all these different terms that have already been established, right? This is one of the most powerful features, and it's what creates that many-to-many dependency map where I can later go back and say, show me all the processes where HR is involved, or show me every activity where this system is touched, right? That ability to very quickly find and cross-reference is huge. And we can clean this up. We can synchronize this with other sources of truth. Again, going back to that Open Pages Blueworks Live webinar, where we can synchronize the risks and controls coming out of Open Pages and not have two sources of truth. We only have one source of truth. So at some point, we're ready to turn this into a process diagram. I'm going to go ahead and turn this into a diagram here, and we'll see that the HR swim lane is added because participant and swim lane are linked, but it's very easy to add new swim lanes and change them. And if we drag an activity onto the new swim lane, it will automatically pick up that participant. So really quick, I'm going to just drag this around and create our updated map. And now it looks much more like a process, right? Albeit a simple one, right? And we'll do that. There we go. Now, this is our straight through process. We do see the handoffs and we do see the different steps that are happening, but now we can start to add a little more detail, a little more complexity. Like what happens when they don't pass their background check? I can add a gateway that says if they pass, then we keep going. If they don't pass, what do we do? Do we end the process? Do I add some follow-up steps? Or do I create a loop, right? Just to kind of repeat and retry. Probably not what we would do in real life, but you get the idea. And then another key feature is the sub-process. So when I have steps that are similar or that I want to group together or that I want to collapse into a lower level, I can select those steps and say, okay, review offer, sign the letter, return the letter. Those are all part of a larger concept that I can kind of simplify this to be accept offer, right? And now we have a much simpler process because I can collapse that down, but I don't lose the detail. I don't lose that granularity. And so I can just expand it. I can still add the documentation to those steps. And then I can add things like color coding, icons. So if I go in and I say, okay, select health plan, that's a troublesome step for us. I'm going to set that as red. So colors can mean whatever you want. You can set standard color legends. And then I'm going to add a little bit of detail to this to say, okay, well, let's say that this is using, the HR system and it takes about 45 minutes with 2 hours of wait time. And there's a couple of problems, like it's highly manual. And that's very frequent. And there's, sometimes mistakes are made. That's probably a outcome or a symptom of being highly manual. But once we do that, we can start to add an overlay of analysis that goes beyond just that visual, that I can dig into some of the details that I've added, like the work time and the wait time or the systems or the problems, right? The problems will actually show a light heat map based on the problems. And so I've only done this for one step, but you can imagine going beyond and doing this for every step. And this is where some of the reports and analytics are going to come in. So all that said, it's extremely powerful. We use Blueworks with every single engagement, even if the client does not use Blueworks Live, whether we're doing a workflow automation or decision management or document processing or AI implementation, we're always using Blueworks to just set that foundation to understand how the business works today, how it could potentially work in the future. So it's something that is just universal in every single one of our methodologies. However, there are limitations, right? To keep it simple and to keep the guardrails, IBM has purposely kept it as kind of a very intuitive, very lightweight type of tool, which leaves room for a partner like Salient to come in and create some overlays to this, right? Some of the things that we talked about, process completeness, process comparisons, efficiency maps, right? All of that is now going to be overlaid and adding value to this core information that you're creating inside of Blueworks Live. So let's transition and do a quick flyby on Blueworks Insights, and then we'll kind of close it out with some Q&A. So let me go ahead and log into our Blueworks Live environment. I'm using a local version just because I want to make sure you're seeing some of the early access capabilities, but certainly you'll start to see most of this is all live as well. And so we're not showing you really anything that is not already available online. And yeah, actually, in the interest of that, let's just go ahead and show the live version. So again, you can log in 3 different methods. If you are interested in gaining access, all you have to do is go to blueworksinsights.com, go to register, and just put in your info, and we'll get back to you on getting early access to, or getting full access to the free trial, and then we'll talk about how you can get full access moving forward. So I'm going to go ahead and log into our account. And that first view I get is my administration dashboard, but you can customize what you see when you first come in. And so this is more of an admin view, but you can see on the left, we do have out-of-the-box dashboards. These are all drag and drop, so I can move these around. I can create new charts and new dashboards. But some of the things we see here, we have a news feed. You can see, okay, I created that brand new HR onboarding. use case, but I can get a quick snapshot of what's going on. But some of the more important admin views are things like activity reports, right? Just understanding what is going on in my account. So you can set a time window, and you can say within, the default is 30 days, but you can set that to 2 months, 3 years, whatever you want. And this information that shows up is going to be relevant to that time window. And down here, I can see all of the different things that have happened within that time window. So, almost 600 activities that I've done, whether that's updating, creating, deleting. And so I can click into this and actually get a detailed view of when I'm actually working more in the account. So it just gives a little bit more of an oversight for our administrators. But it goes beyond just administration, right? We can run different kinds of blueprint reports, like active blueprints within a given month. We just started June, so not a whole lot going on Monday. But if I go back to May, I can see all of the updates that have been done just within our account, right? All the different things based on views and based on edits. Flip side is true too, right? This is the most active blueprints, but what about inactive blueprints? Those are maybe more important. I published a blueprint a year ago and I haven't touched it since then. That's a problem. The goal of Blueworks is that you're never done, right? You want that continual review cycle and the ability to go in and make sure that things are relevant and still accurate. And so, yes, our sandbox is not up to date, but ideally your environment would be. And so you can go in, and this is where that work management feature is inheriting from, where we can even set up KPIs. In our case, we set up 3-month and 12-month KPIs or SLAs, but you can set up whatever alternate time window you want. So which blueprints that have been published have actually been looked at or changed or approved in a period of time. Some of the other things like the tag blueprints I mentioned, this is a way for us to very quickly find blueprints based on their tags. So I can choose multiple tags. So in Blueworks Live, you can search by tag, but you can't kind of mix and match the tags. So if I go in and I look at, I'll just pick finance, right? And if I pick a finance tag, it's going to filter everything that has that finance tag, right? And then the other alternate view of this is if I have the space tagged, we should be able to inherit the space tag in the blueprint. So I can find blueprints that are actually part of a tag that has that same, let's use finance again, where it's either in the tag itself or, we'll see like here, onboarding, right? The gold tags are where the space itself is tagged, therefore the blueprint itself is inheriting. So just ways to get at that information. Let's talk a little bit about the blueprints as well. So looking at things like SIPOC and RACI, and this is where we've added the feature that we can, or that's my HR onboarding. Let's go back here. Where we can actually edit the properties of every activity and feed that back into Blueworks Live. This is where that's going to appear. And so things like SIPOC, right, where we just pull the supplier input output customers from each individual activity. We are looking at doing it at the space level as well. So across multiple blueprints, we can create SIPOC reports. RACI, same thing, right, where we have this RACI matrix of all the responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed fields in that blueprint. Looking at things like value stream mapping, efficiency charts, right? And here's our scorecarding, right, where I can set up my own custom metrics that are not being captured in Blueworks Live today. And this allows me to then run scorecard reports that's going to look across multiple blueprints and let me see kind of how they all stack up based on those different metrics, right? In this case, I have those 15 different metrics, and I can look at it even as a radar chart to get some visibility there. A few other things that I'm going to touch on, then one, I'll leave time for questions because there's a lot in here to cover, as we saw in the feature report. But things like looking at the taxonomy view, right? This is a big one because if we want to be able to organize our blueprints into a taxonomy, traditionally we can use spaces to do that, but now we can use a discovery map to do that and align maybe to the spaces, but really to act as our table of contents that not only has the hierarchies, right, which are basically represented in Blueworks Live by sub-processes, just by that sub-process construct in Blueworks, where we get to L1, L2, L3, and down to L4. And if I click on that, where if we've done a linked process, those links are permalinks. So we don't care where this blueprint lives in our account. We can always find it from this view, right? So as long as that blueprint is our most recent source of truth, and then I can open that either in Blueworks Live or in Insights, I can set a link to every single one of our L4s or L5s or L3s, however deep you want your levels to go. And then we've also added the ability to set up different visualizations of all of these blueprints, right? So we can kind of go in and say, show me how these structured, how these go that way. We can do it as a radial diagram where we can see all of the different components in our hierarchy, and then both a vertical and horizontal icicle chart. So just different ways to look at the same information. We're not, again, not doing anything in Insights that's updating that information yet. It's just showing us what is in our Blueworks Live account. And along those lines, those relay back to things like customer journey mapping. So the ability to set up a visual representation of the customer journey that shows, here's a sample airline customer journey map, right? Where I even have sentiment analysis going on and each of the steps. This is basically, those are the milestones in my Blueworks Live discovery map. And then these are the activities, but then I've added these custom fields, thinking, feeling, using, and opportunities that align back to customer experience. And then the last thing I'm going to show here is the space hierarchy, right? This is something that's really interesting. We're still kind of evolving this one, but this is going to be very helpful in just getting kind of a 30,000 foot view of the entire account, what is going on. And in our sandbox, again, very, very messy, right? But I can maybe zoom into this and scroll in. We'll just hide that. So that's the one of the views that we have there, but I can collapse that down. And then I can even drill in. Let's drill into my account where you can see the breadcrumbs at the top up here. And this is now only showing the spaces, which is still pretty messy, but those are all the spaces in my sandbox, right? And again, if you click into one of those, it's going to show you that blueprint. So with that, we've got about 5 minutes left. I went a little long on the slides, but hopefully you get a good picture of all of the things that Blueworks Live can give you, and then how you can even enhance that further and add value using this free tool for Blueworks Insights. So what I want to do is just share how you can get access if you don't already have access. And it's really become a client of Salient, full stop, right? That's the requirement. So we can work with you on a process mapping or process improvement, process mining sprint. We can work with you on a larger automation or AI initiative. We can work together on just renewing or adding to your Blueworks Live licenses or any IBM software. And the last resort, and we only have a very small number that do it this way, mainly because if we're not allowed to resell and we can't do services for whatever reason, then there is a last resort where you can license directly, but that is not our preferred choice. But certainly if there's if that is the only option, feel free to reach out. We are not, we're talking Blueworks Live level pricing here, so don't be scared away by that if the other three options don't seem feasible. But with that, I'm going to just kind of close things out. And Bob, if you're still with us, I know had a little bit of audio issues there, but hopefully you're back.
I am back.
Open it up for questions. All right, awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Great job, Jared. That was super interesting.
And Sydney, I don't know if you've been monitoring the Q&A. I don't see anything in the Q&A, and I don't think I see anything in the chat. But if you do have any questions, we've got 4 minutes left. Feel free to drop something in the Q&A or into the chat, and we'll just give that a minute to see if anyone's interested in that. But again, if you are interested in gaining access, reach out to myself, Bob, or go to blueworksinsights.com and go ahead and hit register, or just contact us through that link, and we can get you up and running. And if you are not a user of Blueworks Live, my question is why, right? And definitely reach out and we will show you why Blueworks Live is the best process mapping and analysis tool out there. And then with that, you'll gain access to Insights as well, just as that kind of add-on feature. All right, so I guess with that, no questions.
Yeah, the
Pretty
final
cool.
thing
Go
I'd
ahead. Yeah,
say,
go ahead, Bob.
Jared, is that we've had a partnership with Salient for many years, and he mentioned they're a blue business partner, which means they only sell IBM stuff. And I will tell you, I've talked with hundreds and hundreds of customers um, about process modeling, and this capability that Jared just showed you around insights and those reports and things. This is really the next level. So this can take your process modeling from point A to point B, and provide all those benefits, right? I mean, you're already putting all the information in there, right? So then why wouldn't you take advantage of this capability to get the information out of the tool and do more analysis with it? Only makes sense. And so, Jared, thanks so much for taking us through it. We really appreciate all you've done in your support of Blueworks Live, and this tool.
Oh, I think we lost Bob again.
I was just going to say, no, my mic clicked. I just was going to say, thanks so much, Jared, for taking the time to take us through this. And, Insights is a super powerful tool that really takes modeling to the next level. So I would encourage everybody to just take a look at it. I mean, it's really, I've had, like I said, dozens and hundreds of customers ask me about reports and reporting, and this delivers really on many levels. So thanks again, Jared.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for joining us, Bob, and for the partnership as well. So with that, we're going to wrap up. This ends our 3-part series. The replays will be available for all 3 on our YouTube channel. Just go out to YouTube and search Salient Process, and you'll find all of the replays for these webinars as well as others. And we look forward to a new webinar series coming out in just a few weeks. So stay tuned for that. Keep an eye on LinkedIn. And with that, have a great day, have a great week, and thanks for joining.